came up with the name TurboMetabolism because really, if you think about it, metabolism is about energy flow. And when someone's not feeling well, they're dragging, they don't have a lot of energy, they feel tired, they're sleepy, they're foggy-headed. Essentially, they're not getting energy to the cells in your body. And what we want to have, what you and I want to have, and what we want everybody to have is a state where you're feeling vibrant and healthy and whole with lots of energy. You're bounding forward to be able to enjoy life to the fullest, to be able to go to beautiful places, to have wonderful experiences, to learn new things, to be able to contribute in wonderful ways. And I think turbometabolism is a prerequisite to be able to do all that. And when you're doing the same thing over and over again, you have to go back and think about what's the common thread with all the same problems that I keep seeing. And what I realized was that the common thread is an impairment in energy flow. And metabolism is just that, it's the flow of energy, right? So we want good flow of energy so that the fuel is making its way from the gas tank to the tires where the rubber hits the road and your car can push you forward. Similarly in your body, if you're putting in the right ingredients and they're working in good collaboration with your insides, with your mechanisms to extract energy, you're going to have boundless energy. That's what I mean by turbometabolism. And the opposite of that would be feeling tired, feeling sleepy, feeling like I need to take a nap, I'm irritable, I'm cranky, I'm sleepy. Those would be the conditions in which somebody would be in a state of being other than turbometabolism.
In the book, you mentioned a lot about a shift from the standard American diet towards something that you believe is more healthy. It's a lot of vegetables, less meats. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about nutrient-dense, plant-rich diet. You don't have to be a vegan, but you want to shift towards eating more plants, more fruits and vegetables in your diet for sure. More unprocessed food, get away from the processed food, the junk food. And when we do that, we can essentially reignite the body's ability to heal itself and provide an environment for healthy bacteria to grow that are our good friends. They're like the earthworms in the soil that can help us get our health back.
Yeah, so you mentioned the bacteria. The plants have fibers in them.
Right.
And they call them often prebiotics, right?
Yes.
And at Liovi, we like to think about things like as the equation we like to throw around is prebiotics plus probiotics is a happy belly.
Yes, absolutely. Or prebiotics plus probiotics makes symbiotics. We live in a symbiotic relationship with our environment. And so yes, eating those fibers. So traditionally, we learned that fiber is like this toothbrush that cleanses out the inside, but that's just one part of what fiber does. So there's insoluble fiber that does that, but then there's soluble fiber and resistant starch. These are things that we get from our plant-based foods, from our oatmeals and from our beans and from the things that don't really fully digest properly, and they make their way to the colon, and then the gut bacteria get to work on those, and that's that prebiotic food that your probiotics are going to eat so that we can have a healthy population in the belly and have a healthy belly.
Yeah, so of all the, you go to a supermarket, like a farmer's market or a supermarket, what kinds of things, what kind of plants, what kind of foods, of all the choices you can make, are your favorites?
The health promoting section of the store is the produce department, where we have our deeply colored fruits and vegetables that are loaded with antioxidants and things that are going to help us be vibrant and healthy and whole. So that's where the action is, and that happens to be the prebiotic food for our healthy gut.
Yeah, one of the things I remember about the colored vegetables and the plants is like there's this debate about organic versus non-organic.
Mm-hmm.
And things I've heard about is that the organic produce, besides not having the pesticides and herbicides, the key is when the plant gets attacked, because it's not getting pesticides or herbicides, they get bitten
right
by the bugs, they produce polyphenols.
Yes.
And the polyphenols, I heard, actually add flavor and health benefit. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So when we're allowing these plants to grow in a natural environment and allowing them to have that little bit of stress of being attacked by some pests and bugs and so on, that's what builds up their own resistance. Much like you don't run to the doctor and ask for an antibiotic the first day that you have a cold. You want to give your immune system a bit of a workout. So when in this conventional way of farming where we're dumping all these chemicals into the soil, we're weakening the plants, because it's like you're dumping a whole bunch of antibiotics in their food and you're killing off the healthy bacteria as well. So you're not giving them a chance to build up those chemicals that can protect us as they protect themselves.
And in the book also, what I loved about the book, besides getting into, let's say, the science behind the turbo-metabolism diet, you also included some recipes. Could you, and I noticed there's some family recipes in there. Could you elaborate on those too?
Yeah, so my goal was to create something that's scientific, that debunks some of the common myths and give people practical strategies that they can adopt. And I think a big part of that is giving you recipes and giving you ideas for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. And my mom was very kind in allowing me to use some of her recipes, which of course handed down to her from our ancestors, of some things that you can prepare quickly and easily with ingredients that you can find. That was the goal, right? You should be able to make a meal within a reasonable amount of time, 15, 20, 30 minutes. It needs to taste good and it needs to nourish you. And I think that's what's missing, and which is why people end up eating foods that aren't really even edible. They end up eating some junk food or fast food because it's convenient and familiar and it tastes good. So if we can recreate that, if we can reproduce that at home, right, we can take charge of food, which is the most important way in which we interact with the universe.
You have some Indian recipes in there. And one of the cool things I love about Indian recipes is there are a lot of spices in there. Mm-hmm. There's turmeric and the cardamom, right, all those kinds of things. And if my recollection is right, a lot of those things were there to help preserve the food. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. So when all the old explorers went out to find new parts of the world, Christopher Columbus came and found America. Of course, he was looking for India. That's why they got to West Indies first. And Vasco da Gama was a Portuguese explorer who found India. And these guys were out looking for spices because they didn't have refrigeration back then. And they had heard that these spices will help preserve the food for longer, also make it taste better, enhance the flavor, and add some disease-fighting, health-promoting benefits to the food.
Absolutely, because one of the things we're going to be doing on the show in the future episodes, we're going to be actually looking at individual spices.
Wow.
And the history of how they traveled, like you mentioned, from the West Indies all the way back to Europe, or vice versa, from Asia all the way back through Europe, along the spice and trading routes. And I feel that when we study a lot of these diets, like the Mediterranean diet,
right,
a lot of the diets on the equator where it's hottest, like in India,
yes,
they have a lot of potential for the food to spoil.
Right. And
our ancestors seem to figure out what combinations of ingredients helped not just preserve the food from actually smelling or tasting bad, right, but most likely help their health out.
Help their health out, not only preserve the food, but also preserve health, and there's combinations of food. Like, I actually did a whole chapter on superfoods and supplements, which is towards the end of the book. And one of the things that's in there is combining turmeric with black pepper, for example. When you combine turmeric and black pepper, that is what's required to release the curcumin. And if you look at a lot of traditional recipes, there's black pepper and curcumin that are put in together and allowed to mix up in hot water or hot oil. And that combination then will release the benefit, which you're not going to get the same benefit from taking it in the form of a pill when you're getting the nutrients from food.
You did a whole chapter on sleep.
Well, I think that's the most important chapter of the book, right? Because sleep is the most neglected master lever of health. Sleep has to do with our food choices, with our cravings, with how hungry or satisfied we feel. It affects our metabolism. It affects our pain perception. It affects our perception of the world around us. It affects memory. It affects creativity, right? It affects everything about your health. There's a reason why we haven't evolved the need for sleep out of the system. We still need 8 hours of sleep, the majority of us, which is a third of our lives. And I know from my experience, and the research confirms, that people that are sleep deprived, whether they're doing shift work or they're for work or otherwise, they're taking lots of flights across the Atlantic, across time zones, they'll gain weight. You can actually induce disease and have someone gain weight and actually impair their metabolism in as little as 3 days. 3 days of sleep deprivation can make all the difference in the world. And I think in our 24/7 digital society, sleep is something that takes a back burner, and people sort of neglect sleep, and it doesn't take a priority, but it really, really, really should, because it's so critical. And you could have everything else kept the same and just tweak somebody's sleep quality and quantity, and you're going to change everything, including the gut biome, including the bacterial microbiome as well. So sleep is really, really critically important. When we're sleeping well, we're in a state of well-being. we're in a state of where we feel like we are nourishing ourselves, where it's much more likely, it's much more easy to make choices that can be difficult, right? Face it, if you're dealing with an addiction to a certain type of food, or you're dealing with an addiction to go to, a certain junk food restaurant every day, that's an addiction. And it's going to take some degree of wherewithal, some willpower, some mental clarity to be able to consciously make a decision not to make that choice, because it's calling your name, it's pulling you. And if you're in a state of sleep deprivation, your willpower, your decision-making ability is going to be that much impaired.
Well, another thing you mentioned in the book was habit change. In order for people to make the changes, what they eat, how they rest, how they think, you got into habit changes. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's all about habits, right? We're creatures of habit. We find something that's familiar, that works well, that's convenient, and we keep doing the same thing over and over again. And those habits become ingrained within us, especially if it's food habits that started when we were very young in childhood. By the way, that's the reason why fast food companies preferentially target young people, right? They have all these ads for children, and they give you a Happy Meal and you get a toy when you go there, because they're getting you hooked. And once you have that habit, it's ingrained. It's very, very hard to break, but it's not impossible, right? So think about someone who's trying to quit smoking. It's the same idea. You want to substitute that habit with something else, right? So habit is about, there's a cue, there's something that you do, there's an action, and then you get a reward. Think about the last time you went to an amusement park with the dolphin show, right? The trainer clicks something and the dolphin jumps up and does a trick, and then it gets a reward in its mouth. Mm-hmm. And we are creatures of that same kind of habit too. It's 3:30, you know what, I'm getting a little tired. My habit is to grab a big chocolate chip cookie, and then I feel energetic and happy enough to get through the rest of my day. So I need to substitute that action with something else. Instead of grabbing that chocolate chip cookie, for that I'll need to change my environment to have something healthier in that environment that I can grab. It doesn't even have to be a food item. It could be something else that I do at 3:30 that sort of perks me up and wakes me up and gets me through the latter part of the day. Or it could be a healthy snack. It could be an apple or an orange or a handful of almonds that I eat. I have some green tea, and I have to get that same kick. But it takes a little bit of conscious effort, and to be able to make those habit changes, which can be difficult, we need to be able to sleeping well, we need to be managing stress well, we need to be socially supported. And everybody thinks it's a matter of willpower. I would say that more than willpower, it's a matter of friend power too. It's the social environment that we're in. Our peers can make such a big difference in whether a new habit is going to stick or we're going to go right back to what we were doing before. And we can do a whole show on habit change too. It's very, very exciting, and it's very fascinating.
We should. We should. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Vij, it's been a pleasure to be able to speak with you about your book and your research. All I can say is the folks that work with you are very, very fortunate to have you in their circle, because I can see that they get very, very well with you.
I enjoyed it very much, Brian. My book is TurboMetabolism. You can find me at drvij.com.
Thank you.